Take your Bible, look with me at Acts chapter 14. Now, you guys will know this if you've been around our ministry any length of time. Everything we've done has been built on the simple proposition that if Paul is our apostle and we're to follow him as he followed Christ, then when there's ministry to do, we should do it the way he did it. In Acts 13 and 14, his first apostolic journey. This, by the way, is not missionary. Paul never was a missionary. He was an apostle. In his apostolic journeys, he sets a pattern. Verse number 21, when they had preached the gospel to that city and had taught many, they returned again to Lystra and Iconium and Antioch, confirming the souls of the disciples and exhorting them that they continue in the faith, and that we must, through much tribulation, enter the kingdom of God. And when they had ordained them elders in every church and had prayed with fasting, they commended them to the Lord, on whom they believed. Now, my understanding of that passage is when it says they commended them to the Lord, that isn't, God bless you, brother. What they commended them to is the system that he set up in that local church. He ordains elders, establishes a local church, sets up the structure, 1 Timothy chapter 3, Titus chapter 1, and commends them to that which the Lord has established, set in order in their ministry. So the pattern here, he goes into town, preaches the gospel, evangelism. Then he goes and he brings them together in a gathering of edification. Brings them into godly edification, brings them to maturity. As he's doing that, he establishes a local church as a beachhead for the work of the ministry. Then he uses that local church as a basis for the expansion into the next area, into the regions beyond. So the idea is you evangelize, then you establish the believers, you establish a local church, and then you use that as a basis to expand. That cycle that you go through. In our assembly at Shorewood, when we wrote our Constitution originally, we have what we call evangelism, edification, and expansion. We defined evangelism as the proclamation of the gospel to non-believers, resulting in their conversion to Christ and participation in the local body of believers. In other words, we view evangelism as completed once the person has not just been saved, but is placed into the edification process. Edification is the equipping of believers with sound doctrine so that they experience genuine spiritual growth, which results in doctrinal unity, personal integrity, corporate harmony, so forth. Missions designed to carry the gospel of grace to the world needs to follow that pattern. That's my point. So we need a way to be able to identify, apply those things to the work of the ministry. And what I wanted to kind of spread before you this afternoon is the question about how do you then apply those principles? What is the way you do it? We know how to do it in our local assembly because we're doing it. How do you support somebody doing it in a place where you don't have where you aren't, where you know for sure that's what's happening because that's what you want to support? You follow me? What the question? What my issue is. Now, I'm not expecting us to write a conference statement. If you go to the Philippines, one of the wonderful things about teaching in the Philippines was we'd go have a meeting, 30 pastors, and we'd have 2 or 3 days of teaching, and when we get through, they'd write a report and issue a declaration. I'd never seen that done before. I'd been preaching for decades. I'd never seen anybody have a Bible conference, and then we're going to write a report about what we learned, what we're going to do with it. They're serious about what they did. Well, I'm not going to ask you to do that. Probably would be a smart thing if we were as organized as they are, but I've never been that organized. And I'm not a promoter of anything beyond the local church as far as an authority. But as a local church, as your local church, how do you then evaluate these things? We'll have to have some thinking process. And I'd like to share with you what we think, and then have you share with me back what you think about it, okay? One of the things that I've learned in missions, in this kind of thing, is that there are people who do the work and put it on display. I've never met, in my experience in ministry, anyone who has as much or more wisdom about these kind of things than Brother Des Stridham. Des comes from South Africa. He came to America as a South African to carry on the work of the ministry, but he was doing it there to start with. They have a ministry in Africa. And Des understands these things and has practical experience in applying these things in the ministry. Some of the brothers were just over there. Brother Russ was there. Brother Matt was there. And I asked Brother Matt if he would come and just kind of describe to you what he saw, so that you can hear how it can be done and how the application of these things can be accomplished. So, Matt, you want to come? Then I'm going to get Des to come and talk to you about it too. So.
Good afternoon. I just wrote down a couple thoughts of some things that I've learned really being over in Africa with Des. And one of the things that you quickly learn is pitfalls of things that can happen and what's going on. So let me just kind of share with you some things, and some of it Richard already said, but my opinion of things that you see when you're over there. A lot of the things that you see on Facebook from overseas isn't always what it's cracked up to be. To not get too specific, but in our trip in 2020, we were over there for 2 weeks, and 1 week was very fruitful. And another week, we went to a place that things that were going on there were not quite what they seemed, and it was easy to figure that out right away. And fast forward to now, where we were at, where things weren't quite what they seemed, the fellow isn't even in the message anymore. He basically turned the message to where the funding was. And one thing that I would say is there is legitimate work of the ministry going on in these places, the places that we went to. And it's impossible to really know exactly what's going on until there's eyes on it and you're looking at somebody in the eye and not really over the internet. And one of the verses that I thought about was in 1 Corinthians 11. Of course, 1 Corinthians is written as an epistle to correct what's going on in the Corinthian church. But in verse 34, Paul says, "The rest will I set in order when I come." And that's a fascinating statement, because it says there's a limit to what could be done through the letter for what he needed to accomplish there. He needed to show up and put it in order when he came. So I guess when you see the work and you see what's going on, there's legitimate work going on. But one thing that we don't understand in the States is the power of deep poverty to change a message to follow the funding. And we see poverty in the United States, but we don't see poverty many times in the way that you see it on the mission field. And just like it is over here, there's a show about religion. And the guys that are out there that are doing the work, that are the real heroes of the faith, that when you're around them, they make you feel ashamed of your work because they do such a wonderful job. Those are the guys you don't really hear about. Those are the guys that are out there doing the work, and there's not a lot of promotion going on. So what I've gained from going over and seeing what's going on is just really the idea of how important it is to have good I guess the way to put it is intelligence of what's really going on, because it's not easy to tell until you're there. And it's not just that you need to talk to the folks that are over there doing the work, but you've got to talk to who they're training as well. One situation we were in, we taught in a church, this is in 2020, we taught in a specific church for a week. And after day one, we realized that the folks there really didn't have a great understanding, not only of the message, but of eternal security. And that spoke volumes to what was going on with the local minister there. The information wasn't faithfully being reproduced into others. So here's my admonition to everybody who's thinking about missions and how do I give to missions and how should we think about it. One, it's not as easy as it looks when trying to figure it out, and two, what you see on Facebook oftentimes is more marketing than it is what's really going on in the work of the ministry. That sounds cynical, I understand that, but it's actually the reality of it. If you want your dollars to count towards the gospel, then you have to be careful not to throw it away in places where it's going to be misused. So a lot of the challenge that I saw over there was that, and that's the cynical side of it. The other side of it is there's legitimate work that goes on overseas, and there are folks who know the grace message and live the grace message every minute of the day and are out there putting it in other people's hearts faithfully. And it's good to see that, but it's difficult to sort through who's doing the real work and who's not. $100, I'm just throwing out a number. $100 in support seems like nothing here, correct? If somebody gave you $100 a month, you'd be like, okay, great, I got $100 a month in support. Overseas, that $100 can make a big difference. And many times what you see going on is you don't know who's supporting that individual. And 4 or 5 people supporting somebody at $100 a month, it can be a lot of money overseas. I mean, a huge salary here if we were going to convert it. And it's important to see that the ministry is getting done if that's happening, but it's also important to know that might be the person you're supporting. If you've never had eyes on the ground and looked at them and heard what they teach and see what their students think and teach, it's very possible to line somebody's pockets with a lot of money for ministry that's not really getting done. So it is a good issue to think about, and it is a good issue to discuss. And as Richard said, there's a pattern set up in the pastoral epistles, and not a novice, right? Lest being lifted up in pride. The deacons need to first be proven. There's work that needs to be done and needs to be seen before somebody is held up as a good and faithful minister. Those are some insights that I have, and maybe they're not answers, but what I really wanted to do is just to express the importance of the matter so that you can have some understanding with it.
Any questions?
Questions on that?
So to figure out how you verify and validate is real critical to making it.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I don't know if there's a way to verify or validate without feet on the ground. And that makes options limited from when you look at it from an overview. Well, how do I know? It's difficult to know.
Does it make more sense to send people that you know over there, let them get things rolling?
Well, just like Richard said with the Acts 14 model and what Des has done, and I'm not trying to take Des's thunder, but Des has done a great job in sorting this out. And when you go over and see the ministry that's going on, I'm sure you've read about some of the people in the newsletters that are doing the ministry in Kenya, which is what I'm familiar with. I'm not really familiar with the other areas. But when you look at these guys, they're local guys who learned the message, and it takes not only somebody to take them the message, but you have to find the faithful guy on the ground. And then everything that happens needs to happen through that faithful guy on the ground. And you have to have incredible trust in that one person to make sure that they're doing things properly. So it does make sense to go over. But I guess I'll let you get into the seminar issue or the local work issue, because Des just has a lot more wisdom in it than I do. But as somebody who's witnessed it recently firsthand, it takes personal ministry more than it does here in the United States, because the pitfalls can be so great. Any other questions? Yeah. It's hard to reproduce that stuff over the internet.
No, but I'm saying, if you don't have the witness
Yep.
to the ministry or the validation of the ministry, then the support should, I would think, would be justified.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a gamble without it.
Thank you, Matt. Can I tell you that, and I put some papers over here. I only have 30 of them. So like just for the pastors to take them until you've all got one. But when I said a minute ago, in our Constitution, we have this thing, evangelism, edification, and expansion. Let me read you the expansion one. After the evangelism, after the edification process, now the sending and supporting of spiritually mature and properly trained workers into every community and culture of the world, resulting in the planting of grace churches in every ethnic grouping. That's what you're trying to do. That's what our goal is in missions. Our goal is to do that here, there, and everywhere. Our goal in Chicago is to plant churches across the Chicagoland area. When you think about the mission field, that is a foreign country to America, that's still the same thing. So what are you trying to do? You're trying to find spiritually mature, properly trained workers who can go and do the work of the ministry. I'm not just looking to go get some people saved. That's the first step. But then it's the training process. But the trained person gets them saved. The edified person gets them established. The establishment gets going, and then he turns it over to them and goes with their support into expansion. That's the. Now, I don't know any missionary group that wouldn't say that's the idea. Well, maybe I do know some, but as far as validating things, there are, in my experience, I've only personally met 2 missionaries that ever asked me if I was saved. I mentioned things to come a moment ago. Vernon Anderson was the other man and his wife who founded the work in the Philippines. The first time I met Vernon Anderson, and by the way, at way before his life, he denounced me as a heretic because of the King James Bible. He denounced me as a heretic because of the intervention issues. He was not my friend later on in the ministry. But when I first met him, the first conversation I've had with him and his wife, we had lunch together out under a tree on a picnic bench. And as we sat there to eat the hot dogs, she looked at me, she says, "Well, Brother Rick, tell us how and when you came to know Christ as your Savior." Now think about it. I've met numerous missionaries. She's the only one that ever asked me that. Well, if you're going to talk to people in America all over, what are you asking people in other places? There's a brother down in Brazil I mentioned a minute ago, Doug. He was at our assembly, stayed in my home for a week. And we, after church on Sunday, we went down to our local eating establishment. We're all standing around. There's a bunch of us waiting to get in. And I look up, and Doug is handing out gospel tracts and talking to someone about the Lord. And I thought, wow, there's an evangelist. There's a guy that does the things that evangelists do. Well, if he's doing it in the Portillo's in Chicago, what would he be doing on the streets in Brazil? Probably the same thing. Well, all the other missionaries that I'd met, they didn't do that. Now, that doesn't mean they didn't do it where they are, but you understand, there's a confirmation in your mind. Doug moved to Brazil. He lives there today. He didn't go for 4-year stints. He went there forever. The earliest grace missionary, when they first, O'Hare started the Worldwide Grace Testimony and so forth, Mr. Vernon Anderson, Sam Vinton, I'm sorry. Sam Vinton was a missionary in Africa, the Congo. You may have heard of his name. His son, Sam Jr., is actually in Grand Rapids now. Mr. Vinton went to Africa in like 1930. He never came home to America until the early 1960s when the Congolese threw everybody out. That's, to me, a missionary. He didn't go for a 3-year stint, come home for a year of relaxation, deputation, and he went there to be part of that culture. There is a level of commitment that thousands of people have had that way. That's who I'm looking for in our ministry. And of course, the question is, as Matt said, how do you find that? So, I just say that's part of why I gave you those things, so that you can see. For us, that's what we consider. Not just somebody on Facebook says Life of a Missionary and shows you some pictures, but this. Not just somebody that puts stuff on the internet and says, we're doing seminars, help me. That might be great. And your zeal for getting the message out needs to be, as Matt said, those dollars need to be put in places where you know you're getting proper results. So anyway, I don't know anybody personally who has had more zeal for getting the message into a foreign country than Brother Johnny. His heart for his homeland of India has been, he's one of the most resourceful, ingenious guys I've ever met. And you talk about a guy that won't quit. He's still an Ancient of Days and still won't quit. And he's been trying to turn some of the work over to somebody else, and he won't quit doing that because he wants to see it done right. And I've watched Johnny do a dozen different things to get the message out. But it still all revolves around finding someone that you can teach there and then let them do the work of the ministry. Where's Des? He's here. Come on, Des. I asked Des just to explain. Des has been there, done that, and give you something of an idea about what happens on the field and how you can deal with that.
Thank you, Richard. I can just tell you what's worked for me and what I found worked in our ministry. And fundamentally, one of the first things that you have to do is, if you want to have a foreign missions ministry, it has to be based out of a local church. The mission ministry and mission organization must not be something that's outside of the local church. And so if you want to instruct people out in whatever country you're going to go to, and you're going to instruct them, you want them to replicate what you come out of where you teach them. So if I have a local church, the aim is for them to have a local church and start a local church. And I started in Kenya about 20 years ago, 20-some years ago, and I went to see one guy in Kenya that was communicating with me, writing letters, and continued to teach him and send him literature, and I went to see him face to face. We spent time together. He invited a few friends of his, and we started. I started sharing the truth of God's word with them. They started getting understanding, got excited about it, but it took time for them to be established. What happens is, we just recently had, when we went to Kenya in February, one of the guys that was there from Uganda was just so excited about what he learned. But he just learned it. You just had 2 weeks exposure to the information. And he was so excited. He went back to Uganda and he started preaching. Okay? And he says, I'm speaking to this preacher, and he's speaking to these guys, which is exciting. But the thing is, the problem is, he is not established yet. So he needs to get established before and so he sends me a little while ago, he sends me a few weeks back, or maybe a month or so ago, he says, I've organized a seminar with a bunch of preachers, and we're going to teach these guys, Pentecostal preachers are going to come out, and we're going to teach them. And I said, Moses, you're not ready to do that. You're not established. I said, well, it's going to cost us 250,000 Ugandan shillings. I said, well, you organize it, you pay for it. And I said, but you're not established. And so what we're going to have to do is send somebody from Kenya that I know is established, knows the message, knows the doctrine, that I have first-hand experience. I'm going to pay his way to go to Uganda and make sure that they're going to do that, because that thing's set in order. But for me, it was a problem that he sets up a seminar there, and he's not established. He needs to be established. And establishment doesn't take 2 months. The times I spent with Simon and Festus and some of these guys out there that's working out there was years. Because I'm not there every week. I'm not there every day, So it took years for them to be established. And once they got established and they started going out in their local areas, growing their own local ministries and establishing those guys, that's when the ministry started taking off there, because and now suddenly we have an explosion. But it took almost 20 years to get to that point. There's no quick fix in missions. It takes work. But it has to come from a local church. Another thing is what's happening, and what we see happening nowadays, is that every Tom, Dick, and Harry has the missions ministry. Everybody's online and they're communicating with people. Just recently, I've had a guy that was just, he's telling me how he's struggling and he's suffering and he can't pay his bills, and he's doing the work of the ministry, and and can I help him? He wants to go see Simon and he wants to spend some time with Simon. And I said, oh, sure, I'll pay for your way to go see Simon, because Simon's going to give you some instruction. So I did that, and then after that I found out this guy's actually communicating. Because I'm not on Facebook, and this guy apparently is a big deal on Facebook. And he lied to me about what he was getting. And he was getting income, $300 from this guy, a lot of supplies from this guy, and he didn't commend himself. Paul talks about commending ourselves to every man's conscience. He didn't commend himself to my conscience when he was telling me not the truth. But he's speaking to everybody. Everybody here that's online and sending these guys stuff is thinking, oh, I'm doing a good thing. But are you? Are you? Are you helping the local church? Because I get there, and then this person doesn't even have a local church that's functioning. We just went to Zambia with Brother Russell. And Zambia trip now was to see what's going on there. I've been communicating for a long time with these guys now. A few years, been communicating, sending materials, and they're telling me they understand it is great. And the letters and the emails I get is great. Until I get there to see, wow, the local folks in those churches don't even understand half of the things that I've been talking about. That tells me the guy's not doing the work, but he's giving me the answers. So, we have to find it at a local church. And my advice is for missions, if you want to get involved with missions, and by the way, the scripture doesn't use the word missions. I don't believe Paul ever went on a missionary journey. Paul went on a solid journey to establish what God has set him out to do. All right? And so when Paul went out there, and he had to go out there, and the first journey he went out, and he went into Galatia and all those areas, and he says, lo, we turn to the Gentiles. Then he went further, Macedonia and Achaia and all those places. Lo, we turn to the Gentiles. And then end up in Rome. Lo, we turn to... He covered the area that we had to be covered with God's ministry and indictment against the nation of Israel in the book of Acts. But what I would say is, what I find it's difficult to control, especially with social media that we have now, is you don't have... How do you know that the guy that you're communicating with is because everybody's in the social media, they copy and paste. You know, that's what happened. I just, some years back, at this same conference, maybe 10 years ago, a couple came to me and told me about this guy in Africa that they're supporting. I'm like, wow, oh, well, good, man. Do you want help with that? Do you want to get us involved? No, we got this. Okay, good for you. Well, all the best with that. Just be careful. No, we got it. And in the next conference, the next year, they came to me and they said to me, I don't know the year, maybe the year. And they said to me, we have a few questions. This guy is then he's in the hospital, and then he's this, and then that. And I said, would you like me to look into it? He says, please, and they told me they've spent $12,000 over the last year sending this person. It took me 5 minutes to figure out this guy was a fraud. By copying and pasting some of his content in his emails onto Google, search it, and go find a website and find the content there. And so you got to be careful. So my focus is that the way that I based my ministry was a 2 Timothy 2:2 ministry. I go out, I find a faithful guy, and I spend and invest time in that faithful guy. When I go to Kenya, I tell him, I'm not interested in a big gathering of people. Only bring me the faithful guys. I'm going to spend my 2 weeks, I'm going to spend my time only with the faithful guys. They will go out and go do the work. I don't need to see anybody else there. I want to see the faithful guys because I want to know, what they understand, and so that they can go and teach others. Amen. And that's what I found it, and that's what I found work. And what I found works is you need a single point of contact. Like in Kenya, Simon is my single point of contact. Nobody there sends me letters and asks me for stuff. They go to Simon. And Simon tells me, he says, this guy's legit. This is really going on. I can vouch for this. I understand. I know these guys. We can support them. And then I will help if we need to help. And you need a single point of contact here. We call it a SPOC. SPOC, single point of contact, and you communicate. Otherwise, everybody's communicating, and you don't know what the one hand does not know what the other hand's doing. But it has to be based out of a local church.
It's the same thing we use in the nuclear business.
Yeah, a SPOC, yeah, exactly. Single point of contact. And what we need to do in the U.S. and our local churches, what we need to do and invest our time in establishing our local folks in our local ministry is we need to train up some Tituses and some Timothys. Like Paul leaves Titus at Crete to set things in order. We need to send some Tituses and some Timothy to help us to go and do that work. We went to Zambia now, and we came out there, and we had a great week. Russell and I was preaching, and there was a few guys that stood out and really excited about the message. But at the end of the week, we had a meeting, and we realized, well, these guys want to only be part of us because they want us to support and build a new church and build a new have a new property and what have you. Looking for seed money to start a farm so that they can create an income from a farm. Now that sounds all good, but you get that seed money and you spend $50,000 on the seed money. They start the farm and you have a bad crop that year, and guess what? You're going to put some more seed money in there. It just becomes a big hole where you throw money in. And I do not throw money at Africa or any other place. I invest in faithful men. That's it. To get the work done. And I have to go there to see if what they say and what they communicate to me is what's happening. And like Matt says, I go check the guys out that they're teaching in their local ministry to see if they know what, are they teaching the same thing? Do you understand? Is there a successful 2 Timothy 2:2 ministry? Don't let your emotions get in your way when it comes to giving to missions. Because your money just needs to go far, and it has to be controlled by people that are faithful on the other side. So seminars for me, it's a great thing. I don't see seminars or conferences overseas as bad things, but I don't see them as profitable as investing in local churches and training local faithful men to go and do the work. It's got a longer longevity than just having a meeting that says, we have 300 preachers there. How many churches have been established since then? Fundamental grace churches. Well, not really, Because what you do when you have a seminar, you got to pay for the guy to travel there, you got to pay for the guy to stay there, and you got to pay for the guy to eat all week. And I can go to America, I can go to Kenya now and say, oh, I'm going to have a seminar for church leaders and we'll pay for all their way. I can have 5,000 people there next week. That doesn't mean I'm going to reach 5,000 people. I'm going to go focus on the faithful men. That's what Paul did. And I think that's what we need to do in missions. And every, you know, brother Dave has a connect. You know, he can do his thing. I don't need to oversee his work, and he doesn't need to oversee my work. Make that single point to that single point, my single point to my single, and we get the work done. And by the way, Kenya has got enough place for many other guys to go and do a ministry there if they want to. But I just found over the years that there's a lot of chances out there. You know, but what we've seen in Kenya is these faithful men. I mean, I spoke about this in April. There's a young guy, Titus. He ran into Simon, and Simon started teaching Titus. And in 2014, Titus got saved, and he got into the message. He got to understand the message, rightly divided. And since 2016 to now, Titus has established 4 local churches with 4 preachers in every local church that's doing the work of the ministry. Actually, 3. He's got the 4th church. And every one of those have overseeing elders running that local and established. And we went there and we went to some of those local churches and saw it functioning. But that comes on through the line. It didn't come through, you know, just we throwing money at it. 2014.
And then how many other churches like that between Titus, Simon, and
That type of thing, I don't know. I really don't know. I can't tell you how many churches we've actually got going in Kenya with these guys, but tens and tens and tens of churches has been going on, and it's spreading now to every other area. And there's new areas because what Titus now did, Simon, Titus, Festus, Peter Karanja, and Joel. There's a bunch of other guys, not that Joel there, okay? He just sits there and makes fun of people. But, you know, and all these guys in Kenya, every one of these guys, every week goes to 3 to 4 different groups of local villages and teach 3, 4, 5 men at a time and teach them. And they do it at 4 different locations every week. So you can see the expansion going out there. But it started with one guy. And that's what we need to focus on. When we went to Zambia now, one of the brothers there that wants to, you know, the help and the support and the finances. And I don't know where we're going to go with him. I really don't know where it's going to end up. But then we need another young man by the name of Goldman. And Goldman is excited. He gets the message. But you know what Goldman says? I don't want to start a local church because I just come out of that movement. And I don't want to replicate what I came out of. I want to do this right. And he's not in a hurry to start a local church. I want him to start a local church. But he's teaching people one-on-one the message of grace. And that guy, I don't have a second thought of supporting him to do that. You know, we've just sent Bibles out there. I've sent him money for Bibles and the guy that we visited, Charles, for Bibles. And a day later, Goldman's like, yes, the Bibles I bought, and I'm giving them out. Praise the Lord, you know, wonderful. Charles is like, I have to fix my car first before I can go get the Bibles. And, you know, it's a long story. So you've got to be careful. Your money is going to be used. But my point is, let's focus on faithful men. Don't focus on how many people you can reach immediately. If you reach one faithful guy there, he gets established. He'll reach another faithful guy, or 2, or 3, or 4. They'll get established, and that's how the ministry has worked for us in Africa. But we need to get some younger faithful men trained here. For example, you're talking about India. We need to be able to say, go to India, go see if this works. It's what we see here is what that, and report back to us. You don't have to go. You don't have to go live there for 5 or 6 years. If that's a desire you want to do, go for it. But just go and see the work, connect with the people, see what they understand, see where they're at, and report back. We need the Timothys and we need the Tituses to go and do this work, and all these various other guys. Anyway, questions.
Did you go to Zambia as opposed to, say, South Africa because you felt the Lord put you, or what was it? I mean, you have a lot of contact in South Africa, so...
Well, I'm from South Africa, So I've got obviously contacts in South Africa, and we've got local churches in South Africa that we minister with and work with. But in Zambia, as the guy's been communicating with me for a while, and they said they're doing great. They have students, and it's my responsibility to go and see whether these things are so or not. And so that's why I went there, you know. I can be in Uganda, Tanzania, I can be in Kenya, I can be many places in Africa every week of my life. But I just can't get to everything, you know. But yeah, I go as I search the scriptures and as I understand the scriptures, and these guys communicate with me based on God's word working me, I make a decision to go and see them. You know, I don't know, is that the question you asked me?
Yeah, I figured you had to be doing something with South Africa.
Yeah, I was born in South Africa, raised in South Africa, and I've got, you know, and that's where the African ministry started, was from South Africa. And then I moved from South Africa here, and I continued that ministry in Africa. And it's not glamorous. You know, it's me in a local church, and it's me in an office sitting in the house and on a phone doing a meeting with somebody. There's nothing fancy. This is just what we do. And it's me and my wife, basically, part of a local church that's function, and our local church support us to do what we do. So, any other questions?
Has Grace School of the Bible been set up out there?
Yes. Kenya, the guys are doing Grace School of the Bible. These guys that I've been mentioning, they go and teach Grace School of the Bible classes that they've gone through. And they're teaching those classes to other guys. Yes. We start off with a basic lessons of who is God, who is Jesus Christ, what is the Bible, who's the Holy Ghost. Very basic things about, you know, what is baptism, and just the basic various things. And then once they've gone through that, and they got some basics, then we move on to fundamentals of Bible study. They do the full course of fundamental Bible, and then start with Romans. Manuscript evidence, we do a very basic manuscript of evidence, because this manuscript evidence is way above what we need to do in Africa at this stage. But, you know, in Daniel, a lesson, we've got Daniel classes that you've done now. Those, we've actually handed out that day now, and they're teaching from those notes, and as they're understanding, go out and teach those messages there. So yeah, that's the aim. We use Grace. We use Grace School of the Bible as our training, as a tool of training for Africa. But I do realize one of the things that I would like to do in my ministry is not to take away from Grace School of the Bible, but I'm working on breaking down Grace School of the Bible into modular forms so that I can make it a more simplistic Bible study program for Africa. Because guys there listens to Richard on, I mean, you listen to him, and you and I have trouble following him, okay? Now imagine somebody speak a third language, or, you know, English is a third language, or a second language, and got to follow and take notes and everything else. So we need to get that in a modular forms and have it more control. And what we do in Kenya is we finance printers and we finance computers. Titus and Festus and those guys, when they go teach the classes, they print out the lessons. And they hand the lessons to the guys. Everybody get a note, gets the file, and gets into there, and they follow those lessons. So everybody gets a hard copy of the transcripts, lessons that we hand out. So to use that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was wondering, is there any accountability, like you send them money and there's receipts?
Yeah, I do. But if I send, yeah.
Somebody that just keeps taking it in and there's no accountability of receipts or.
Yeah. What we do is when I send Bibles and they're going to go buy $1,000 worth of Bibles or $2,000 worth of Bibles, I ask for the receipts. And ask for receipts to come back to make sure that money has been spent for that, especially with the new guys. A guy like Simon, I have no doubt he's going to use that money for the right things. Because I can see the Bibles that he's bought, and I know he's not buying that Bibles out of his pocket. He's buying the Bibles with the funds that we sent. And when we went there and got the report back, these guys were using the fund. And people were, I get letters from various guys in Kenya thanking me for the Bibles and thanking us for the giving of these things. So yeah, we try to keep an account, especially with new guys. That's what I did in Zambia now. When I sent money for Bibles, I asked for receipts for those Bibles. Any other questions?
You know, there's accountability for more than money, but it's for the sound doctrine.
Yeah.
Well, they know the doctrine.
Yeah, where they know the doctrine, yeah. It's an accountability to that, yeah. Yeah, it's wonderful to have, one of the guys that with all the positives that you get news, you get some negative news too. It's like when we went in 2020, we went to this guy, and for years I've been sending him some money and support and, and Bibles and tracts. And I got there, and nobody in his church knew anything about what we're teaching. And I realized this guy was just keeping me on the line, and it was my fault for not probably following up. And it took me several years before I got there and says, okay, that's it now. I'm done with that, So, yes, sir.
Looking back on that particular scenario, how would you have followed up differently?
How would I have followed up differently? I would have had Simon go out to him and travel out there and spend time with him a week or two and pay for him to go out there and make sure that he can report back, and I would do that. That's what we're doing now. I sent Simon out, and Simon's going to Uganda now, and he's going to oversee that meeting that's happening there. Because Simon's actually going with, I paid for Festus to go with him too. Now he wants to take Titus with me too, and Titus too, and I'm like, I don't want 3 of you guys traveling in a minibus over to Uganda. If all 3 of you, something happens in an accident, I got 3 vital guys that's gone. Yes.
Regarding logistics like that, so language barriers in different parts of Africa. We're kind of talking about Africa here right now. If there's churches and tens of churches going in Kenya from 20 years of work, and there's 3 faithful guys, and they're
There's not 3; it's more than that. But yeah,
oh, right,
okay,
right,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
these are the guys who keep
Yeah,
mentioning.
yeah.
So that's the hierarchy.
Yeah.
Of what's going
Yeah.
on. Are they limited, or do they need to establish a faithful translator in some countries, or do they speak all the way?
They only go to their own. They speak in Kenya is like Kiswahili, and there's various dialects, but everybody can communicate with the basic dialect of Kiswahili. Okay. And English is an established language in Kenya, and in Zambia. Actually, in Zambia they speak better English than they speak in Kenya. So English is a language that they learn in schools, and they talk. And so when we go, when they don't have a barrier, when we go there, we have an interpreter.
Okay.
And somebody interpret for us, just in case for some of the folks that can't follow fast enough in the English, we do that. And the guys also translate some of the study materials into Kiswahili, or the language of Bemba, or whatever it is. Yeah, so we do that, but we now financially full-time support Festus, Simon, and Titus. And then I send monthly support, smaller amounts monthly, to the guys that assist these guys. And we've also provided funds for these guys for motorcycles between villages to move around easy, and pay for the motorcycles. They get out, and they get out on the bikes and get to the various areas, yes. But I don't pour money into the first thing I do. I can share this quickly. Our time is up. But Debbie, the Rescue of the Bible, will get an email from somebody online, says, and I get many of these emails on a weekly basis. We want to partner with you. Come and visit us. And the only reason they want to partner with us is just so that we can register it and then have your financial support. So the first thing I do is, well, thank you very much for your outreach. Debbie sends me the name. I write them back and says, hi, my name is Des. Got your name from Debbie. You inquired about this. They send you tracks so long. Let me learn something about you. Tell me about yourself. And then they tell me about themselves. I says, okay, that's great. Can you tell me your testimony? Tell me how you got saved, and what do you believe? What do you trust? And I communicate. And I ask, and most of the times those guys come back and don't give me their testimony. They just tell me what they do. They have an orphanage. Then when they start with the orphanages, I know, okay, I'm on the wrong track here. And so I have a tiring, ongoing communication before I even start investing.
You're betting. You have to
Yeah,
bet every
I have to figure it out, and eventually some of these guys will just fall off, and others will carry on. But you have to have that process along. It's a fairly long, drawn-out process to see the validity of the person, or the seriousness or the faithfulness of the person. You got to have that communication.
Do you have somebody that you pay and support, like the people you just mentioned? Do they know how to do those?
No, I do it.
So it's just you right now?
Just me.
Well, you need more use.
Yeah, and that's what we need to do. We need Timothy's and Titus's, and I've got Matt helping out, and brother Russell is starting to help in Zambia and things like that. And so slowly but surely, I would like to take some guys out there and start. That's got a desire for that, to go see that. You see, most people has a romantic idea about missions. They think, oh, mission, that's so wonderful. Oh, we want to go to Africa. We want to see it. It's nothing that you think. You know, people say, oh, did you go sightseeing? Did you see a giraffe? Did you see a zebra? No, I saw traffic, and I went to preach from 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I get home, I eat, I sleep, I get up in the morning, I could do it all over the whole day tomorrow. I don't go sightseeing or anything. Poor Jeannie, Janine's like, I wanted to go buy some beads and stuff like that. We ain't got time for that. You know, we're too busy we have, you know. And so, I mean, we were in Zambia. We were 2 hours away from one of the most beautiful waterfalls in the world, Victoria Falls. And I'm like, I don't have time for that. The time I have and the money that I have and the time I'm available, I'm spending it on the menu. You know, so this idea of, you know, and then you go there and you have a bathroom sitting on an outhouse there. There's a hole dug in the ground. There's a few pieces of wood over it, and you got to go squat over that thing.
I'm sorry.
And
Everything you just described is exactly what I thought Africa would
yeah. And it's just like, okay, you know, I mean, it's not, you know, but then you meet the people. It's uncomfortable, but then you meet the people, and especially the genuine people. And that's why we have to focus on the faithful, the genuine people that's sincere and that's faithful and authentic. And you invest in those guys. You spend time with those guys. But you got to be one-on-one, face-to-face, not communicating only, not Zooming. You got to be there and walk with them in the streets and walk with the people to find out who they are and what they are. Corresponding, and this doesn't give you the same thing. It's two different. I mean, you had an idea when you got there. It was different, right? When you meet the people one-on-one. Everything can look good on paper, good on an email, but when you get there, you know the real deal. Yes?
Final question. If I may, who's our greatest competitors out there? Roman Catholic Church?
Pentecostal. Big health, wealth, and prosperity movement. Major movement. And most of these guys, it's coming out of that. One of the guys in Kenya now that's one of our faithful workers there, he came out of Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah. And he's doing a great faithful work there. He's doing great. James is his name. So.
Islam, the presence of Islam?
And not in Kenya so much. Islam is there, you know, but very, very, very calm and peaceful, no problems. In Sierra Leone, when I was in Sierra Leone, that's a different story. As a matter of fact, the only guy from the Muslim faith that I ever gave the gospel to that got saved was in Sierra Leone. One guy. And but you know, I don't even know where he is now anymore. Lost contact with him. But yeah, we don't have any problems in Kenya. You'll have a mosque sitting here, and you'll have a church sitting here, and the mosque puts their speakers out towards the church, and they go loud, and then the church put the speakers out towards the mosque, and you preach loud, and the guys wave at one another and just carry on, you know. So it's weird. That's more in the cities, not in the rural areas, obviously, you know. I found is when you go into the rural areas, you get more sincere people. It's weird. In the city, you know, they're more first world attitude. And in the countryside, it's just, these guys get on with it. The guys in the city wants to replicate what the modern mega church is doing. You get in the country, don't care about that. Sit under a tree, sit in a mud hut, you know, just happy to meet and to talk about the scriptures. All right, anybody else? But yeah, so the point is, local church, single point of contact, focus on faithful men. Focus on faithful men. Can I say it again? Focus on faithful men. They will focus on other faithful men, and they'll get the work done. That's the model I think we need to adopt, and we need to train Timothy's and Titus here and start exposing people to the mission work and do that. Questions? Yes, sir.
Is there any kind of media out that way, like radio or anything?
Actually, in Zambia, one of the guy Goldman I met, he actually goes on radio and speaks about Word Rightly Divided, and he's got a few people that has listened to that, contacted him, and got got to understand the Word Rightly Divided. And I'm in the process of actually, because he doesn't have the financial means, he's got a full-time job too, but he's got also a family to take care of, and so I'm actually in the process of supporting him now to go on radio time. And he's told me when I get to Zambia, he's going to put me on radio there and to speak the message of grace out there. So he's got access to that.
Is that real expensive like it is?
It's not too it's cheap for us to support them there. You know, for $90 for what? I got to get right now. Maybe $30. I think you can buy a couple of hours of airtime, and I can't remember. I did it, but I know it's cheap to go there.
Oh, just send your show over there and get it transmitted and pop them on the radio.
We possibly can get few of that radio tapes and send it over there, and you'll possibly be able to play it for us
And you can
on the
listen to
radio.
those in the car before you.
All right. Anything else?
I just think how hard it would be for any of them there to understand me.
We need to translate.
Yeah, you have to learn. One of the things you got to do that, you got to learn to speak. You know, while Russell went there, and Russell's got a deep voice and he speaks, and I'm like, he's trying hard to following because I'm used to it already. I go and you go and pa 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 rapid fire. You say quick, hard, few short sentence. You give a space, and you give a space. You got to talk like that. And so, brother, where is he now? He's gone. No, there he stands. He had the same problem in the beginning. He's like, oh, I need to simplify and and that way,
The developers for software in Vietnam,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. Every Monday night,
Yeah.
I speak like that.
Yeah, you have to do that and effectively do it, and you simplify it.
Okay.
And it's actually the beautiful thing. Matt was talking about that when he was there. He says, it's actually making it so much more interesting to simplify the message. You're forced to simplify it for folks to understand it. And it's, Brother Russell was speaking about the satanic policy of evil, and the guy looked at him and says, what's that? And he said, no, Satan has a plan of evil. Oh, okay, I don't have a word for policy, What is policy, And so we speak like that, and I say that. You guys know what I'm talking about. When you get there, what is that, So
That's why the key is a local church there. You're not trying to send us there.
yeah,
You're trying to send a message. And it needs to be communicated in their language by them. You
yeah,
find the faithful man, you teach him to go
do that,
talk.
yeah,
He can talk to the people they understand. The idea about me going there, or you going there, and being the source of it all, it's you handicap yourself.
yeah,
The key is find
Focus.
somebody there,
Focus.
train the people there, and then let them use that as a basis.
How many of those churches were already established under a different belief system that maybe turned around from being talking to your guys? Were there
The guys that was in an established church there had to leave the church. There was guys there that we just reached with the last trip that we went there that actually was in local churches, was part of that local churches, spent family inheritance by giving the church property and to build a church, and then they found Right Vision and they get kicked out of that, and then they have to go start something else.
Whoa.
Yeah. They've just given all their inheritance away, and then they have to walk away from that because the church is, well, we name it and claim this, you're out on your own. So, yeah. But these guys do it with a smile. I mean, that guy wasn't like, oh, they told me this. But I'm so happy I found this message. I don't care about that. Just, yeah, we will fight and argue and take one another to court because, you took my money. We're just happy. People, and also another thing, I'm going to say this. It sounds maybe harsh or weird or whatever. People say, why don't you bring some of those guys out to the States? Let them spend a few years here and stuff like that. Said, you know what? You'll rob them of the simplicity of their life. And that will be bad news. You come live here, now you have to have a car, you have to have insurance, you have to have all this stuff. And now you're trying to work yourself around the clock to pay all these things. And these guys, all they live for is to get up, have a meal, and go and teach. and grow their own plants and go and teach, and they come back, sleep, eat, sleep, and tomorrow they do the same thing. They don't have mortgages and all this stuff. Very simplistic life. Anyway, time's up. Guys, we have to eat. 5:15.
Thank you, Des. Well, I guess time is up, and that does kind of sound fun, doesn't it? Get up, eat, go teach, come back, sleep, get up, go teach. Sort of sounds like my life anyway. And I still have to have a mortgage. All right, well, my goal primarily was just to expose you guys to some of this information, to the thinking. Some of you have thought about this, some of you haven't thought about it. I think that it's fairly clear in my mind, in a way, that the whole model that we've been exposed to most of our life about missions is not where the world is today. There was a time when you would send someone to a country and they would be there. The single point of contact would be your guy there, and then he'd go do things. Now that's not nearly the way that's going to be efficient. And to me, Des said they use Grace School of Bible material. I've told everybody, you take the doctrine, great, use the school material all that you can, but take the truth that it's teaching, the edification process that it's teaching, and put it in their culture. Gear it to them, and then let them go. It'll work in them. They'll figure out how to do it. So what you're looking for is that. So for us, when someone contacts us, it's like talk about India. And I said about Johnny. Johnny's worked so diligently, and he's gone down many roads that he had to stop. He's tried everything. He got the simplest heart just to go. You want to do this? Go. And then he find out, well, it didn't work. Okay, back up and let's go another. He finds some that work and go. There are some brothers, and Dave's going to talk tonight about the ministry that they've connected with there. There are wonderful things happening, real, genuine things happening, and that's who you get behind. And then if someone comes up over here and says something, then, as Des said, that's who can tell you. Like the brother in Nepal, I want the brothers in India to validate him. I don't want somebody that's reading his internet messages here. Dr. Lima, Parsanana, some of those guys that we know are faithful, that are doing the work. So that process, but why do you do that? Because you have the understanding that you need to have faithful men that are properly trained to do the work of the ministry. That's who you're going to get behind. So for us, that's sort of the way we develop our thinking. And actually, the elders in our assembly are trying to figure out a way to write some of that down so that when they call Alex and tell him their sob story, or they're happy. Listen, you understand about getting excited about running the right division, don't you? When I got saved, I was so excited about getting saved, I went and told everybody. First two people I told was the preacher of the church where I was going to and the youth leader. They both told me I was nuts, that I was already saved. Boy, you missed that one. You start telling people. You get excited. You learn some things about right. You get excited. I understand getting excited, and I understand wanting to get it out to others. But I also understand that if you have an excitement to get it out to others, and that's what you want to do, then somebody needs to sit you down and say, "This is the way to do it." Not just assuming that you as Des says about somebody going to set up a seminar, totally unqualified to do it. That's not what you do. So. Anyway, I hope it's been helpful to you. I'm sorry for those of you that came with, nobody gave me any questions. I got one question, and the answer to that question was no. And so the person that gave it to me, that's the answer. If you want to know why it's no, just come, I'll talk to you about that. But if you came, maybe it'd be helpful for you. But for you preachers, these are things that you need to talk to your assembly about and your leadership and have a mindset about these things. Brother Art, his assembly is called Shorewood Bible Church South. It's a church plant that our assembly made. And 25 years, they're celebrating their 25th anniversary this month. And, that's a wonderful thing to be able to have ministry that plants itself and grows and so forth. And they've planted several assemblies from them. And that's what That's what you're about. Someone asked me the other day about, we're looking for a preacher in our church. Do you have any to send us? Grace School of the Bible is not a sending institution. The average training system is you send someone to our institution, we train them, and then we'll send them out. They'll never send them back to you. They'll send them to whoever and people look to them to get, that's all backwards. In fact, that's illegitimate scripturally. But it's a system that's been used for the last 200 years. We send the school to you. You learn it. You get it. It's designed to be operating in your assembly. You've got people that need to be trained in your assembly. Here's a way to do it. That's what it's designed for. And then you know what happens? In the second year of the school, you guys know this, you look around and all of a sudden you've got a ministry. You didn't even know you were doing it. Though doctrine gets in you begin to share it with people, and it just generates ministry in your life. And then, okay, I've got ministry. So by the time, the hardest thing we have to do is get people to get out of the third year because they got so much going on already that the third year gets kind of pushed to the side. It's the most important year ministry-wise, but it's, people cram 3 years into 5 or 6 because of that. But then you have a ministry where you are. We've literally started hundreds of local churches. People don't recognize, they don't say, where's your church? All over America, all around the world, actually. The largest graduating class we ever had was in the Philippines, 63 people. And my point is the doctrine works in you. So instead of sending you if you want to send somebody to Chicago to us, we'll take them and we'll keep them because that's what happens. But if you can send the doctrine there, it'll work where they are. You've all heard me say, if you want to know where the local Grace Church is in your community, if you don't have one, what do? Go out in the front of your house, turn around, take a picture of your house. There it is. That's where it starts.
Is GSB set up in a way that if we don't go to Des directly or David or Johnny, but we want to support GSB, we could help them out that way?
Help who out? If you send money to Grace School of the Bible and it's designated for Des, we'll send it to Des. Designated for Johnny, we'll send it to Johnny. Our assembly, we support Des, and we support Johnny in our mission work. We do that by the church has a designated amount that we give to them every month, and then any out of the general offering, and then any money that comes in designated, we add to that. And we want to be as generous as we possibly can. But we have a family in Lithuania that were members of our assembly. He got saved, and he actually translated the King James Bible in Lithuanian with the idea that when he got it done, he was going to go home with the gospel. And we published it, helped him, we published it after he did that, Darius and Agna. And they live there now, and we support them. But they come from our assembly, then they wanted to go home. And so for us, when we're looking at that, and I say this to you, listen, guys, I hope you heard what Dad says. They need some Timothys and Titus. Some of you need to step up and get involved in this. Some of you need to step up and think about more than just going sightseeing tomorrow. Some of you could work in some of these areas. Some of you could be the person that goes there and does what Des does where he in other places. You can partner with him. He can teach you how, and give you counsel in that. But don't just think about this as something that somebody else is doing. You can do this. You can be a part of it, and you need to be. And let the doctor, whether it's in Africa, India, or Chicago. If you can't find a place to work where you are, call me. Because I got places right in our neighborhood we can put you to work. But where you are needs the gospel too. Evangelism, go get people saved, get them into the edification process, which is get them established in a local body of believers that does the work of the ministry, where they can develop the doctrinal unity and the personal integrity and the spiritual growth to do those things, and then send people out who are spiritually mature, properly trained, into all the communities around where you live or the world, wherever their heart desire is to go, and plant some grace churches. And when you do seminars or outreach ministries, and there are some ministries that they just go do seminars and they leave. Seminars and they leave. Well, if it wasn't local based, what were you doing it for? Were you trying to reach into that community? Okay. But when you leave the community, you didn't reach into the community. So we do a thing we call 7 Mondays, Monday nights. And it's 7 weeks of studies, 2-hour studies a night. We've done that with Arts Group in Chicago, and Ted's done it several times where he's at and so forth. A lot of people do that. We do it. But we don't do it just willy-nilly. There's a place where we go where we're trying to get something established, reach people. In other words, there's a local focus hook to start with. It's not just nothing. If you go to do into areas where you don't know anybody, it's a good way to do that. But it's still for the purpose of establishing something in that community with the people that get saved, because evangelism doesn't stop until you've handed them into the next phase, the edification stage. So when you're thinking that way, and we live in an era where media dominates things, and I think if you can see from this conference, we've had 300 and 400 hookups every session. At least 100 of those should have been here or would have been here pre-COVID. But what COVID taught people is you can sit at home and have a good time. And it doesn't cost you $150 a day, hotel room, food, and you lose the opportunity to meet all you people in the flesh. Or maybe I say personally. But there's a difference in that, being here and not being here personally. Okay? Do you have any questions?